If a single photo can change someone's life, it can also expose what the world had been refusing to see. Anok Yai was not waiting outside an agency, hoping to be chosen. She was a biochemistry student in New Hampshire.
Before I started modeling, I was studying biochemistry at Plymouth State University.
Working long hours, carrying family expectations, and trying to build a future through school. Then, she visited Howard University's homecoming, posed for a photographer she had just met, and watched her face move across the internet before she could make sense of it. Within days, fashion came calling.
There's this photographer, Steve Hill, and he took a photo of me. I was not ready. I was just walking by. He took it, and I was like, all right, here's my Instagram, and then I went home. Within the next 24 hours, I got 30,000 followers or something.
Within months, she was standing at the front of Prada's runway.
First show that I ever opened was the Prada show. I remember how stiff I was. I was walking like this because I was literally terrified.
The industry called her a discovery, but that word leaves out too much. The refugee history, the discipline, the caution, and the work it took to turn sudden attention into power. On February 22, 2018, Anok Yai opened Prada's Fall Ready-to-Wear show in Milan. She had been working as a professional model for about 4 months. In an industry where new faces can spend years moving from castings to major runway placement, that speed was rare enough to become news on its own. Naomi Campbell had opened a Prada show in 1997. Between Campbell's appearance and Anok's, the house went more than 20 years without placing a black woman first on that runway. Prada also went more than a decade without casting a black runway model at all between Campbell in 1997 and Jordan Dunn in 2008. Her opening marked a personal breakthrough and made a long absence visible at one of fashion's most powerful houses. Prada had spent decades shaping taste, deciding who looked expensive, modern, desirable, and worthy of being placed first. In 2018, that position went to a dark-skinned South Sudanese woman who had entered fashion through a viral photograph only months earlier. Anok understood the weight of it immediately. After the show, she spoke about representing women of color who rarely saw themselves appreciated in mainstream media. She also described the moment as bigger than her own career. Prada gave her a platform, and the force of the image came from the gap that preceded her. Anok Yai was born in Cairo in 1997 to parents from South Sudan. Her family had been shaped by displacement and by the violence that marked Sudan and South Sudan. When she was still a young child, they reached the United States and eventually settled in Manchester, New Hampshire. The move placed her in a very different world from the one her parents had left behind. But the pressure to build something stable followed them. Her father placed intense pressure on academics. Anok has described him assigning extra math and science work at home and having her read the dictionary when she was very young. Her mother gave her another kind of preparation. She taught Anok to own her beauty instead of shrinking from it. Money shaped that discipline. When Anok was 16, her parents told her they could not pay her way through college. She responded by working long hours. In later interviews, she named house cleaning, Walmart, and another retail job. She worked around 40 hours a week while holding on to school. Before any agency called, Anok already lived with pressure from several directions. She was a daughter of refugees. She was a student trying to move toward medicine. She was earning money through physical work. She was carrying family expectation without the safety net that often makes ambition easier to romanticize. She enrolled at Plymouth State University to study biochemistry. Early in her career, she also spoke about wanting young girls to see themselves in STEM. Beauty did not have to erase intellect, and attention to appearance did not have to become the boundary of a girl's future. Fashion existed in her life before Howard. She watched America's Next Top Model with her sister. Naomi Campbell stood out to her as proof of what Black beauty could look like when attached to power. She had informal encounters with scouting before the viral photograph. In a W profile, she said she had been approached at malls and nudged through classmates connected to agencies, and she declined. The public record does not show a formal agency contract she rejected before 2017. Anok had been approached informally, and she said no. She knew fashion existed as a possible path. She simply had no reason to trust casual entry points into a business she did not yet understand. Anok grew up in New Hampshire in an environment where her dark skin made her stand out. In later interviews, she described racism from childhood and classmates mocking her skin color. She also linked her reserve and social anxiety to years of being watched, judged, and treated as different. Fashion later interpreted that reserve as mystery. Anok framed it more plainly. It came from self-protection. That history shaped the way she responded to attention. Long before Howard, Anok understood that being seen could come with judgment. An informal scout might sound exciting from the outside, but for someone without industry knowledge, legal guidance, or financial protection, the invitation could also feel risky. Modeling is a business built around the body, the face, the hair, the walk, and the willingness to let strangers interpret all of it. Anok had already lived with that kind of interpretation in a less glamorous form. By the time she reached Plymouth State, she understood that her image had power. She also understood that power could be used by other people. Her refusals before 2017 came from caution, not confusion. The path being offered was too unclear, and she had no reason to enter a business she did not yet know how to navigate. Howard changed the pace. The photograph moved before she could measure the risk. Once the image traveled, agencies approached her as someone the internet had already validated. For a young woman who had spent years managing visibility carefully, the sudden attention brought opportunity and pressure at the same time. The photograph came from Howard University's homecoming weekend in Washington, D.C. The event was Yard Fest, held on October 20th, 2017, on Howard's campus. Anok was visiting during one of the most visible weekends in the HBCU calendar. Steve Hall, a photographer known online as The Sunk, saw her near the end of Yard Fest and asked to take her picture. He posted the photo to Instagram. The caption identified the Howard homecoming context, and the image started moving. Early coverage recorded the post gaining roughly 19,000 likes and bringing her thousands of new followers. Anok later said she went from around 100 followers to about 30,000 within a day, then far higher soon after.
Within the next 24 hours, I got 30,000 followers or something.
The exact early follower count was never independently audited in public, but every account agrees on the speed. The image spread fast enough to change the next week of her life. Her first reaction was fear. She has said she saw her phone filling with notifications and thought people might be making fun of her, or that she had somehow become a meme. Then the meaning of the attention became clearer. People were responding to the image with fascination rather than ridicule. The photograph captured dark skin, sharp features, stillness, and a presence that did not ask for permission. Yard Fest also gave the photo a specific cultural setting. It began at an HBCU homecoming, a space rich with Black-style self-presentation and visual confidence. The image started in a community that knew how to see her. The fashion industry noticed after it moved outward. Kyle Hagler at Next Management saw the photograph after a friend sent it to him. He wanted to meet Anok, and the agency moved quickly. Next flew her to New York and signed her the same day she arrived. Soon after, she went to a Saint Laurent casting. She has described the outfit clearly in interviews. JCPenney heels, a Miley Cyrus t-shirt from Walmart, and Hollister jeans. She entered one of fashion's most selective spaces wearing the actual clothes of her actual life. No borrowed glamour, no carefully engineered arrival. Just a student pulled into a world that operated by codes she had not been taught yet. A casting never guarantees a career. The industry can love a new face one week and forget her the next. Anok's early advantage was attention. Her challenge was turning attention into structure. At first, she planned to give modeling 6 months. She expected she might return to school. In early interviews, she described her biochemistry studies as temporarily on hold while she adjusted to New York and the pace of fashion work. Over time, the practical conflict became obvious. A global modeling schedule and a biochemistry degree in New Hampshire could not fit inside the same life without something breaking. She tested both paths, then chose the one that had opened in front of her. The language of abandonment does not fit. Anok carried her intelligence into a business that required a different kind of study. Her parents were frightened by the shift because they understood education. They understood medicine. They understood the stability those paths promised. fashion did not offer the same recognizable safety. Their concern also gave her a practical reason to treat modeling like work, not fantasy. She had to learn quickly, ask sharper questions, and prove that the opportunity could become stable enough to justify the risk. After the first wave of attention, Anok began studying the industry itself. She later said she researched fashion intensely, including finances and marketing. She took business and economics courses online because she wanted to enter rooms knowing what she was talking about. Viral attention can get someone noticed. It cannot teach contracts, money flow, agency dynamics, client relationships, or the difference between visibility and leverage. Anok understood that gap quickly. She came from science where information has structure. Fashion often hides structure behind taste, relationships, and social codes. If she wanted control, she had to learn the hidden mechanics. A viral photo can create demand. It cannot protect a model from being underpaid, misread, overexposed, or handled by people who know more than she does. Her response was practical. She studied the system that had suddenly decided she was valuable. She also resisted the personality the industry tried to place on her. In interviews, she has said fashion wanted her to act like the cute, bubbly, happy girl. That role did not fit her. Her public image became quieter, sharper, more controlled. She did not give the industry constant access to softness simply because it asked. She also began treating modeling as performance and authorship. She has spoken about creating characters for shoots and giving opinions about the images she helps make. In the Mugler Alien Hypersense campaign, she pushed to perform physically instead of relying entirely on digital effects. A model's control can be subtle. A look held longer, a movement chosen, a character built, a refusal to flatten the face into whatever the room expects. Anok learned that images can define a person if the person inside them does not push back. When Anok opened Prada, she became the second Black woman ever to open a Prada show and the first since Naomi Campbell. She was also the first Sudanese model to open for the house. Prada is a house whose runway can shape the visual language of a season. Opening that show places a model at the front of a story the brand is telling about beauty, power, and modernity. For 20 years, that front position had not gone to a Black woman. The show placed Anok in a difficult position. She was a new model receiving a career-defining opportunity. At the same time, her body on that runway carried a history she had not created. She became proof of progress and proof of delay in the same moment. Anok's opener was remarkable. The absence that made it remarkable pointed to a deeper problem. Fashion often uses the language of firsts and historic moments to congratulate itself. A 20-year gap also reveals the institution that allowed it to last. Anok's own words moved in that direction. She spoke about Black women seeing beauty like theirs placed at the front. She understood that the image would travel beyond the runway. Young, dark-skinned girls would see it. Editors would write about it. Casting directors would have to explain why the gap existed. Prada would receive credit for the booking, while the booking made its older record easier to question. During that first year, the public story kept returning to speed. 4 months, 1 photo, 1 runway. Those facts are useful, but speed can make labor disappear. Anok was learning how to move through castings, travel, contracts, hair rooms, press, and public interpretation at the same time. She had to become fluent while being watched. Representation gave viewers an image they had rarely seen centered, while also placing unusual pressure on the person chosen to carry it. Anok received attention because her image had force. She also inherited conversations that should have been handled by the industry long before she arrived. The Prada runway gave her visibility. The years after it show how much work visibility demanded. From early in her career, Anok spoke directly about dark-skinned beauty. She wanted it normalized. She did not want it treated as alien, rare, or strange. She had grown up seeing lighter skin praised while darker skin was mocked, and her own childhood in New Hampshire gave that observation personal weight. The industry had long known how to use Black models selectively. It could bring in a dark-skinned model to create drama, contrast, or edge. Anok wanted something different. She wanted dark skin treated as standard beauty, not as a special effect. Her hair experiences made the issue practical. Early in her career, stylists assumed her natural hair was a weave. They pulled at it. Some did not know how to work with it. She has said she lost 10 inches of hair in her first 6 months of modeling. She and stylists had to watch YouTube tutorials together on professional sets. A major production can have expensive clothes, major photographers, and high-level clients while still failing to prepare for a black model's hair. Anok began carrying her own products to shoots. Many white models could arrive and trust the team to handle them. She had to arrive as both model and backup infrastructure. Her response became visible. She chose afros and cornrows, partly to protect her hair and partly to insist that black hair belonged on major runways without apology. Over time, other black models began asking for similar treatment. Backstage teams learned to leave her hair alone unless proper care was in place. She walked with black hair intact, refused avoidable damage, and forced the industry to meet a standard it should have already had. The practical side of this work often disappears from glossy coverage. Hair damage costs time, confidence, and control. Carrying products to set means preparing for other people's lack of preparation. Watching tutorials with stylists while working at the top level of fashion shows how far the industry still had to go. The glamour around Anok's rise did not protect her from racism at work. In May 2024, she described an incident from a Zara e-commerce shoot. She placed it in 2019, while another published account connected it to 2018. The date is less important than what she said happened on set. The production lasted several days. Near the end of the shoot, while a makeup artist was powdering her face, Anok said the photographer used the phrase "la cucaracha," Spanish for cockroach, toward her. People around her smiled and laughed. The next morning, she refused to return unless the photographer was removed. She said a team member assured her the behavior would not be accepted and that he would not be there. When she came back, he was still on set. Then the situation turned against her. She said the crew claimed she had made it up. Anok left and demanded full payment for the work she had already done. Later, she said she was warned that speaking publicly could damage her career. The account shows how fragile protection can be for a black model, even after major runways, campaigns, and press attention. Fashion could build images around her beauty while still leaving her to defend her dignity in the room where the work was happening. In 2020, another public incident placed Anok in the middle of fashion's language problem around race. During the global protests after George Floyd's killing, Corrine Roitfeld posted a photo with Anok and wrote, "Miss you." In the comments, Roitfeld added that she saw Anok as her friend rather than through her identity as a black woman. At the exact moment when black people were asking institutions and individuals to stop doing that, Roitfeld later apologized and called the post insensitive and tone-deaf. Anok responded in Oprah Daily. She described the moment as jarring and connected it to a broader pattern of microaggressions in fashion. Black models were expected to work at the highest level while also educating the industry about black history, black skin, black hair, and racial harm. That demand is exhausting because it turns the person harmed into the person responsible for instruction. Roitfeld's comment revealed how even admiration can flatten a black model's reality when race is treated as something polite people should look past. Anok's response corrected that logic. Friendship did not erase blackness. Support did not replace understanding. The people around Anok could celebrate her image while still failing to understand what that image carried. The timing made the moment sharper. Fashion was posting black squares, statements, and public messages about racial justice. Anok's response pushed beyond surface allyship. She was asking for a basic form of recognition, to be loved, hired, praised, and protected as a black woman, without that identity being softened for someone else's comfort. After Prada, Anok kept building. By July 2018, she had become a global spokesmodel for Estée Lauder. She also appeared in Prada's Spring-Summer 2018 campaign. By the Spring-Summer 2019 season, she had walked 16 shows, including Chanel, Saint Laurent, and Louis Vuitton. Her work expanded across major houses, campaigns, covers, and editorials. She appeared for brands and publications that made clear the viral moment had become a long-term career. In 2022, she appeared among 9 African models on British Vogue's February cover. In 2023, Models.com named her Model of the Year in the Women Plus category through both the industry vote and Reader's Choice. In 2024, she won the Reader's Choice again and placed as runner-up in the industry vote. In 2025, the British Fashion Council named her Model of the Year. In 2026, Time placed her on the Time 100 list. Her career also developed beyond modeling as display. She became more vocal about creative control, character, performance, and how she wanted to be seen. She spoke about the standard of beauty she entered and the one she intended to become. By then, her work had moved far beyond the question of whether the industry had been right to call her. The sharper question became whether the industry could keep up with the woman it had rushed to claim. Awards and rankings can sound like a checklist if they pile up too quickly. In Anok's case, they show how long the work continued after the first wave of attention. She kept moving through seasons, campaigns, editorials, public controversies, and the pressure of being treated as symbolic. The viral photo stayed part of her public identity, but her career no longer depended on that first image. By then, she had built a body of work strong enough to stand on its own. Anok has also insisted on an identity outside fashion. She is a self-taught oil painter. She began with a self-portrait that she returned to over time, adding details as her life changed. She has painted friends and spoken about art as a serious part of her creative life. She also spent time at BlackRock in Dakar for a residency, stepping away from the fashion cycle to focus on making work. In interviews, she described artist Kehinde Wiley as a mentor who helped her through creative blocks. She has spoken about a possible painting project or show, but the public record supports that as a plan rather than a completed exhibition. Her connection to South Sudan also became more visible as her career grew. In 2023, she returned to South Sudan for the first time since her family left. She described the trip as making her feel whole in a way she had not experienced before. When she accepted the British Fashion Council's Model of the Year award in 2025, she used the moment to speak about Egypt, South Sudan, and Sudan. She brought political and family reality into a room built for fashion celebration. That choice shows how little interest she has in becoming only an image. Cairo, South Sudan, New Hampshire, Howard, Milan, New York, Dakar. These places are pieces of a life shaped by movement, pressure, work, and self-definition. Painting also returns her to a different form of looking. Modeling places her in front of someone else's camera. Painting gives her the surface, the time, and the final decision. Again and again, Anok moves from being seen to deciding how seeing works. The photograph at Howard was accidental. Anok was visiting a homecoming weekend. Steve Hall saw her, asked for a picture, and posted it. The image moved faster than anyone involved could have planned. Anok had already learned discipline through family pressure, school, and paid labor. She had cleaned houses, stocked shelves, studied biochemistry, and carried the expectations of parents who had rebuilt after displacement. She had already been approached by fashion and walked away when the path felt unclear. She knew the power of being seen, and she knew the cost. When the industry finally came toward her with force, she entered it. Then, she studied it. She learned the business, protected her image, questioned the persona being placed on her, and treated modeling as a space where she could perform, decide, and build. She also named what the industry preferred to hide. She spoke about dark-skinned beauty without softening it into vague representation. She spoke about hair damage, unprepared stylists, childhood racism, microaggressions, and professional risk. She turned preservation into precedent by wearing black hair on major runways and forcing teams to adjust. She kept building after moments that could have reduced her to a headline. The word discovery feels too small. It describes how the industry first noticed her. It does not describe how she survived the attention, learned the business, changed the terms around her image, and built enough work to make the origin story secondary. Her career depended on choices made after attention arrived: learning, refusing, protecting, speaking, returning to origin, and building a record strong enough to outgrow the photograph and its myth entirely. The door opened through a photograph. Anok Yai made the career by walking through it with discipline, caution, and a refusal to let fashion fully decide where her story ended.